Welcome to the Resilient Addict Podcast. I'm Jody Lewis. I'm your host, and I'm here with Brian Shillingburg. Brian, how you doing?
What's up, Jody?
Yeah, it's good to see you, brother. I recently met you when we both attended the ITAP PSAP certification program, which a lot of people probably don't know what that's like, but it's similar to a CSAT, which is a certified sex addiction therapist, but more within a pastoral tone. And so I'm super excited to have met you there. And we've been chatting a little bit offline. And I invited you onto the podcast because you have such a vast experience in this space. And, not only from, both of us come from the addict side, as well as doing the hard work to get through that and become different people on the other side. And I know it's both of our passion to use the pain that we've been through in our life to help others. So with that said, would love it if you could just give me an overview of, what you'd like to share, what you're all about, and we can go from there.
Sure, man. Man, thanks for the space, Jody. You're such a good guy. I sensed it, when we were in those meetings and your conviction in your texts. And then, then we got into the small group and then it was just you and me and we connected. And man, it's just an honor to know you. It's an honor to be a part of what you're doing. And, excited to be here. My name's Brian Shillingburg. I've started the Ninth Inning Project, and that's a very difficult story from the beginning. But just a little bit about me. I've been in recovery for the last 2 years. Very grateful for that. It took a pretty hard rock bottom to get there. I was a high school principal here in the Sugar Land area, one of the most prominent high schools here in the state. I was at the top of my game. I loved school. I loved working with kids, and I loved everything about it. And in an evening, I decided to go text a prostitute to see her. And in 20 minutes, from a meeting of 2,000 people at a school to having handcuffs on my wrist. That journey, needless to say, was just absolutely like a nuclear bomb on our lives, on my family, on the community, on the school, on pretty much anything and everything that you could put my name on. It really blew it up. So yeah, sitting in a jail cell, knowing my life was over on the outside, and I kind of looked up and they had a hole to urinate in and four walls. And right at that moment, I realized that my life was going to be drastically different. I walked into that jail cell, just to kind of give you a picture, walked in with this bucket that they give you. I had a fever. I was sick as a dog. And I don't know, it was like 6:00. I walked in and there I was on the 6:00 news, with Mia Grady and everybody in the jail cells. It's like one of those scenes in a movie, like people shaking the jail and like they see me on the fallen principal on the TV that's in there, and then I'm walking in there and I thought, this is crazy, man. Like what just happened? And I think, that moment, Satan thought, man, I got this guy. A lot changed in that moment. In the next couple of weeks, I got connected with Be Broken Ministries. I don't know if you know Jonathan Doherty and their team. I'm going to a retreat tonight. Man, I'm so pumped. But they have a Gateway to Freedom retreat. 4 days, I learned so much. I learned so many themes of why this was a thing in my life. I had to get accountable in my life. I had to go through the process of figuring out the root cause. Jonathan said, get to the root. What is the root of this thing going on? And so that's where it started. Man, that journey and the journey I've been on since then has just been transformational. I got all the things, right? We could talk about them all, going through the counselor, going through a formal disclosure process, reading that to my wife, going to Stephen Cabler, for my polygraph, and starting this new normal of my life of trying to kind of fumble around and understand how this addiction had pretty much ravaged my life, from early on. I had to get accountable for the things in my past. I had to be accountable for what was going on at in my family's home, accountable to the things that had happened to me, really painful things that I had to deal with, And then came the process of accountability and getting in small groups and getting plugged in, and then starting to learn how to walk with Jesus, man. I think, I got the opportunity to, I think you do Pure Desire, right? So I got to do that study first out of my church at Grand Parkway. And that's a whole other story, which I'd love to tell another time. But we moved from doing the 7 pillars, then we moved to Regen, and I got to walk that for a year, 12 steps of just learning and knowing about Jesus, and really starting to realize what the next part of my life is going to be, and that's going to be to tell my story, to help men like me, to get support and accountability and honesty in men's lives, help dads help with their sons, help churches with this epidemic that people want to hide and not deal with. It's just been a beautiful journey of me recovering my life in Christ. And then, just like AA says, like, all the promises come true, man. You know, uh, I've got a beautiful family that stood by me. I've been able to work from home and meet an incredible guy that's showed me a whole new, different career that I had to learn and figure out. And I got to do that from home and be with my 2 golden retrievers and my beautiful wife and my son who's in college, and just kind of reset and learn what's next. And so in December, we kicked off Ninth Inning Project. You could tell I'm a little bit of a baseball guy. Ninth innings for not those that have fallen, but that need to step up. They need to get accountable. They're just right at the end. They don't know what to do. They're lost and fumbling around trying to figure out, like I did, how to get sober from pornography and sex addiction. We're just going to talk about it. We're going to get it out there. We're going to have the hard conversations. We're going to start learning that this is hard. This is hard work for men to uncover and unravel the work that is the many I know decades that have used this to cope and to deal in life. And so that's where the ninth is, man. And so I'm excited. I get to work with Mark at There's Still Hope, Mark Dennison. I don't know if you know him, but he's brought me on board in December, and he's just giving me a place to do one-on-ones with men, and through his community, and also get to lead awesome small groups with his team, with his guys. And right now I've gotten to do pastors. Pastors are my favorite, man, because they're so similar to being principals. Like, a principal is responsible for this whole building, kids, staff, community, the whole thing. And pastors are very similar in that regard. So I just connect to them, and so getting to do that and write, I've gotten to write, and then just, get my story out there and talk about how we help others deal with this ugly thing. So
Wow, Brian, thank you for sharing that. That's a really impactful story. I'm wondering if you could speak to yourself 5, 10 years ago as a principal, or let's just say maybe there's a pastor watching or a teacher, somebody that is in that position where they're influencing children. What would you say to that person to help them understand that living in that place of secrecy and shame is just this barrier to making any effective change? I don't know about you, but I run into a lot of men who are so much in this place of shame and fear that it just keeps them from opening up at all and making any impactful change. I know for me, I lived I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Omar Minwala, but he calls it a secret sexual basement. And I lived in this basement below the house that nobody knew about. And that was all these different things that I engaged in to make myself feel better, because I was in a place of pain and hurting. So what would you say to yourself and to those men who are maybe struggling, living in a place of shame, living in a place of having this secret basement that nobody knows about?
And I love that analogy. There's been so many secrets, in my life, you know, that shame cycle that you and I have had to learn about, this thing that man, Satan uses to
Mm.
tell you that you are, here are the things that I tell myself: horrible. I'm a horrible person. I'm dirty, unforgivable. I'm ugly. Like, I would wake up and I'd tell myself that again and again and again and again. I wake up in the morning. And then, so just as you deal with the addiction cycle, right? Preoccupation, and then you want to escape. You want to escape from those feelings. So you push into something that will help you cope and deal. And then you act, and then you feel shame. You want to cover it up, and you just use other things. For me, other things, I had, AA calls it a touch of the isms. I used to be 450 pounds, super heavy. Food was my idol, food and pornography for sure. When I broke up with food, alcohol just came right, snuck right in. And in 3 years blew me away in alcoholism, man. I'm thankfully sober 6 years, May 20. But the thing is that the root cause was that shame lie that I was telling myself as a kid. And
Mm.
so if you think about, you know, uh, I love the onion example. You got the onion, uh, and in that, it's got that little seed inside of it. And man, if that thing is dark and gross, like, it runs the whole onion, right? Like, these layers grow and grow and grow. But if you don't get to that root, that's what Jonathan told me the day I got out of that jail cell, was that he was like, you got to get to that thing. You got to get in there. What's wrong with today is that everybody's in silos, right? Kids, man, you saw it in the pandemic, in the article that I wrote. It shot issues of our kids up out to the planet atmosphere, out of the atmosphere, man, because kids were isolated. I saw it in my own son. He was at my school. I watched him struggle because he couldn't connect with people, and it was this just inward isolation that just fueled, man, over those next 2, 3 years, our schools were nuts. Teachers were dropping out and all this stuff. It was just, it still hadn't recovered in Texas, man. Uh, so, getting back to that piece about shame, like, what I would say is that, you know, beyond the norming of what we see in today's modern culture of pornography, is that we've pretty much set a norm to say that it's okay for, or that kids will be kids, or men will be men, and that these things are just a part of growing up. And so what I would say to educators, what I would say to dads, what I would say to parents, is that pornography is the gateway. It is the gateway to things that will absolutely destroy a human's life. And, people, you talk to it, you talk about it, and people are like, what are you talking about? That's not, it's the oldest thing paid for since the end of time, right? Like, but man, the things that I've learned, and now looking and watching and taking a step back and writing now, and reflecting on the ease of access for kids, the way that we're using technology to just absolutely destroy kids' lives. Like, you and I could talk and talk about that, but I would say to parents, like, we have got to take a stand. We've got to take a stand for how we use technology for our kids, how we expect them to engage in it. We have the most Gen Alpha students are the most anxious ridden student group we've ever seen in education. And the reason being is that constant dopamine shot to the amygdala, man, that is turning off our prefrontal cortex, being able to decide. A kid's brain, their prefrontal cortex isn't even developed yet. So when we shoot all this social media and all these things at our kids, they can't handle the dopamine, man. They can't handle what's going on in their brains, and they are just absolutely anxiously overwhelmed. And so we've got to tie in and start getting aware. We've got to start having conversations. We've got to start opening up, talking to our kids about what this looks like. And then we've got to put in like practical ways to help kids deal with this and this new landscape and you know make a shift to knowing what we're doing to our
Yeah, that's a good word, brother. A lot of this starts with how we parent those children, right? So, I've got 9 children, yours, mine, and ours, Brady Bunch, and I've got 2 left at home, 11 and 14. I just absolutely love all my children. But the struggle is real. The access is unprecedented. And if they're not going to, even if you do everything right as a parent, and I mean, you don't give them a phone until they're in high school, you lock down all your internet at home, they'll always get the opportunity to have exposure. It could be a kid on the bus. It could be a student at school. It could be over at a friend's house hanging out. And it's so rampant. One of the latest studies that Peer Desire put out with the Barna Group, like 77% of men struggle with porn, 50% of pastors.
yeah,
And these
just
are,
gave my wife that quote this morning in the shower. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the fascinating thing about it is all of those people who are struggling today, I shouldn't say all, but the majority, it started in childhood. It
right,
started, and I think the average age of porn exposure now is 8 years old. Can you
yeah,
imagine that? Eight
yeah,
years old. I know for me, I was exposed at 10, and I
yeah,
was exposed to other things before that. And it absolutely changed the trajectory of my life. And
mhm,
I had nobody to talk to. And
mhm,
so, I think it starts with parents being open about sex, open about pornography, and talking to their children about it. I mean, such an epidemic that we're facing. And I know in Texas, where you're from, they have instituted some things to try to curb that. One, they've gotten rid of phones at school, which I know they've done here in Washington as well. But you
yeah,
guys also have an age verification, which, while as you and I were talking, it doesn't stop the ability to access, but it certainly is another barrier that we've got to get through. Um, Gosh, what other things do you think we could be doing as parents or as a government in whole that would perhaps aid in this epidemic?
man. So this article I wrote with Pipe the New Drug, I talked about this. And the thing that we don't always take into account as parents, because I think we're becoming more overall aware that this is a thing, right? I think awareness is starting to grow, but I think we are still kind of working in the silos of what you just talked about, which is access is anywhere, it's everywhere. The core of this is about the conversation with your child. It's the hard talk. It's the discussion on how that goes you're at a sleepover or what you're doing or how do you handle that on the bus when a kid's watching porn on the bus or you know whatever it might be, things that parents don't know. This is the thing that really is hard is that, for instance, like I had a kid who a parent was diligent. They caught their daughter in those chat rooms. You realize that that our school age children can get into a chat room and within maybe 15 20 seconds they have access to a child predator. I mean, that fast. It's a snap of the finger.
Yeah.
Okay, so as a middle school principal, I had 1,500 kids, 1,500 kids that I was dealing with. And you want to know of a really good sized population and understanding of like what kids are impacted with over a course of a decade. I saw it all. What we don't take into account and what the big issue is that your child can be completely off technology, not even touched it, never seen it, never wrote in it, never said anything. Yet they could have a whole online profile, a whole online process about them, a whole rate or hate part on any kind of social or feed that can rock your child. And I don't mean that to scare you. I mean that to say that here's a great example. I had a kid that wasn't on media, got there, you could take it's so easy to click a picture, right, of a kid, right? Throw that up, rate or hate on a private Instagram account. All these kids go in, trash this kid, and then guess what? The whole school has just wrecked this kid, and he didn't do anything. Not a dang thing. Okay. Now, think about the absolute devastation of a privately leaked photo. Think about how high schools, and this is very prevalent, man, that you have porn, basically child pornography of all these collections of girls that have trusted a guy to send this kind of thing out. And it's collected, it's stored anonymously, and it is shared, and it rocks lives, man. It rocks lives. The thing that we've got to realize is that this is so much bigger than having or not having technology in a bedroom, or having access, or who you're texting, or how you're texting, or which all those things are important. It's way bigger than that.
Mm.
And how we're preparing our kids and our families to know what they're walking into when they go, to middle school. So,
So, since you've seen so much in the school population, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine some of the stories you must have and the things you've seen. But from your perspective, if a parent suspects their child is accessing porn or has been exposed to porn, or they've caught them accessing porn, how do you, knowing what you know now, how would you say that parent should show up? Should they yell, scream, shame? What are you doing? Why are you looking at this? Or what approach would be the help? I mean, obviously that's not the right approach, but I guess what I'm getting at
yeah.
is, you know, I know from me and my personal story, what I was seeing was attractive to me because as a man, I'm God has wired me in His image for creation, right? And so when I was found out at the age of 10 or 11, I was faced with this massive shame and guilt and this is bad. And so that basically laid the foundation for my secret life. There was this duality. Like, mom says this is really bad and she's yelling, screaming, and mad. And there's a part of me that's like, but this feels good or looks good. I don't understand. And so I must have to hide this. And so then creates this place in which we operate out of where we're basically having to live out of secrecy because both may be true, but
Yeah.
the hijack that happens in my brain, the stimulation, the preoccupation of things that I'm thinking about, it starts to drive behavior, which just grow over time. So,
Yeah.
if you could speak to parents and from a principal's standpoint of just all your experience, like what is the best approach there?
Oh, man. I mean, I'll say what I said to my son, and we talk about and my son's incredible, and he has been through so much with my world of addiction, and has rocked him and cost him dearly, and just imagine your dad being a high school principal getting arrested for something like this, and all your friends, your whole school base, that was their principal. Yeah. um and I'm so thankful for him, because we've had some deep combos on this, and it's hard because I grew up with the love of technology. I just love it. I love it. I love everything about what it is and does. And I've always been fascinated with computers, and always in wanting the highest, the next technology piece. Right. But, you know, our kids have they've grown up in that. Like, that's who they are now. The technology is their world. You do this, and they don't even know what you're doing, like, they don't understand. They are a different generation. And so, you know, my place that I come from, or what I would tell any parent, is first to ask yourself the question, where is your heart? Where are you at? Because I guarantee you, if you're a dad and you're walking in pornography, or man, I just touch it once a month, or man, I just really like this kind of, edging. I kind of like edging to pornography, or I just really like this, the way, this girl looks on a YouTube video that plays golf, or, you know, I think we first got to take a look at ourselves. We really got to get accountable for who we are and what we are as parents. And what are we doing? Are we fast forwarding that show on Netflix that's got a sex scene? What are we standing for in our home? Are we taking a commitment that we are going to walk with integrity, and we are going to honor Jesus and our maker by the way that we do what we do? I think that's just the first thing, right? Is take a look at yourself. Look at the three fingers pointing back at you. That's always a good thing, right? Parents always say, do as I say, not as I do, right? But when it comes to this kind of thing, it's do as you do. It's really being accountable with yourself. So that's first. Second, man, is you just got to get eye to eye. You got to get eye to eye. With how many kids you have, I never got through to a kid by yelling, berating, standing over, getting hollered, and trust me, I grew up in a military home. Like that. I get it. That stuff's come out of me before, but when I connect to a kid, I get down at their level. I get in their eyes. I look at them, look at me, talk to me, get honest with me. Let's get transparent here. Where are you at? Why is this happening? What's going on? Don't settle. Don't settle with I don't know. Open a space where people can listen. And you, like, if you can't receive what's about to come out of their mouths, forget about them opening up about something so private when it comes to pornography or masturbation. Forget it. If you can't create that environment for kids to uh, talk to you about this, then you're already done as a parent. You're
Yeah,
already done.
that's a good word, brother. I love how you say create an environment, right? Because they may not understand, right? They may not understand why they are attracted to this, why they can't stop. And so I know, like, when my approach to my children is to explain to them, like, hey, this is normal for you to be attracted to this. These porn manufacturers who are making this, they have your number. They know how to cater this to get the most dopamine response from you. And our body thrives off of dopamine, right? It's driven by dopamine. So helping them understand some of the brain science a little bit behind maybe what's happening, not being shameful, like helping them understand, like, you are wired to be attracted to a female. It's just, it's part of who you are. But that's being hijacked by a system, by a manufacturer who is essentially hijacking your brain. And so for me, like with my boys, I try to always remove the shame, not speak down to them in a way it's like, how could you do this? Why are you doing this? Just naming for them, like, hey, this is normal. You would be attracted to this, but let's talk about the repercussions down the road, how this affects your relationships, how you see your future spouse. I know in my life, I thought porn was, everybody did it. Like, what's the big deal? I'm attracted to women. They want to do this. But man, it was a hard awakening for me to realize it changed. It created this delusional belief and objectification in women that was so unhealthy. When I finally saw it, I was like, oh my goodness, not only am I supporting an industry that is forcing the majority of these women to do this work, drugging them, paying them money when they're on at their lowest place. I mean, no girl at 5 years old says, when I grow up. And so I think if we just start breaking it apart and looking at it, you're right, looking at ourselves, what are our beliefs? Because I know for me, like, I'd created a justification in my mind that this was okay. And the reality is it's not. And so, have you experienced any of that in the work you've done with men, where there's just this general justification that looking at porn is okay, they're not hurting anybody? Maybe there's so many reasons why they feel like or that majority, in fact, interesting, just to throw in an interesting stat, the rise in pornography used by females is an
Oh yeah.
astounding number. It's
30,
mind blowing.
right? Like 30 something percent, right?
It's like 37% of
37. Yep.
females are now
Yep.
struggling with porn on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Man, I think in some of my circles where I've worked, or mainly it's gotten to be where, you know, people are desperate, right? They know that this has ravaged their relationships, their careers, their families. You know, I think the issue that I get in that moment, and maybe not in a place where I'm working with a guy that's just like, what do you do and why do you do that? It's more so when I'm working with men who are fighting this thing, it's really this bigger issue of complacency, this bigger issue of saying, well, it's like in rationalizing and being able to not accept or understand that this is not going to be a part of your life. You can't make this a part of your life anymore. You've got to give up. You got to give it up. But when you got to give it up, you got to give all of it up. And that's so hard with the world that we live in, man. That's so hard. Like a good example, I'm working on my Forerunner. I'm trying to get a rack for it. We do a lot of traveling, and so I was looking, and all I did was look in one forum to look, has anybody had this experience? And then bam, there's an ad right in my face. Like I wasn't asking for that. There's just so much of that we have got to accept where we are today in society, and we've got to be able to. We can't rationalize that. That's not integrity. That's not what God's called us to be. He's called us not to objectify women. And that's the crazy part about the algorithm, about the connection of social media, is that it trains upon the things that you look at the most. It wants your attention, and it loves men who like women, to see women, because we're just naturally created that way to appreciate and like those things. And so technology says, man, you like that. I got to give you more of that. I think it's getting to a point where men can just get real clear about this radical honesty, radically being able to be accountable to the littlest thing. And then what we do as a result. Man, I was talking about secrets yesterday in a group. Who you are behind that curtain when nobody's watching, that's who you are. That's really who you are. You the guy in front of the curtain, right? The guy that's you put your best foot forward. The guy behind the curtain, that's the real guy. What is he doing? Nobody's watching. What are you doing? You know? So I think that's the challenge I see for men is the complacency, being able to root this thing out from the bottom. And I'll be the first to admit that's really hard for me. That's really hard. And that's hard for most men because we've trained ourselves decades. For me, 30 plus years in that, just wrote over and over again exposure, that is just, I've trained my brain, my chemical nature, my whole makeup has been designed around that. So
Yeah, one of the men that I've done a lot of work with, he's a PSAP himself. He helped me see that the way our brain works is we create these highways. It's like a pathway that is the
narrow pathway.
fastest, quickest highway to get what we are seeking when we're bored, down, depressed, stressed out to the max. We have these highways. When we stop using that highway, the goal is to grow weeds up over it. The highway will always be there, and our brain will always know how to get on the on ramp. But if we can continue, the more those weeds grow up, it becomes something that it's a path we choose not to take,
Yeah.
and it's intentional. And I love how you mentioned living in integrity. I mean, this comes down to, where is our moral compass? Are we living in integrity? What are our values? And a lot of times we have to adjust some of those things because there is a justification within us that minimizes objectification and prioritizing our needs over what, say, our family and our spouse and our relationship with ourselves truly needs to be, right? So, um,
Yeah, absolutely. I think about morality, you know, and that word is, when I think about Jesus coming to free us from ourselves, from us to, where he was trying to tell people so much, hey, it morality is just not enough, guys. The old law doesn't get it for us. That's not where it's at, because now we're living in, um, you know, a place where we're just kind of more focused on ourselves, you know? I think that and what Jesus has done to free me from even myself, man, that I don't have to carry that. I don't have to lift that. I can walk in freedom.
that's a good word. So, looking forward, where do you see? Let's look out to the future a little bit.
Yeah.
What needs to happen from a societal standpoint, do you think, to help curb this? I know we talked a little bit about what has happened in Texas, and I know we talked about how this starts at parents. But with the ease of access, is there anything you think could be done, should be done differently that would allow us to? I'm thinking, like, is there legislation that needs to happen? Is there something else that needs to happen in schools? Where
Uh,
can we take this further?
I
I mean,
a lot.
and
I
here's
have a
something
lot.
I bet you do, but here I'm going to just give you this. I want to I want to speak to this just a little bit. This just popped into my mind. I've got a son who has struggled with porn, and we've done a great job of limiting his access to the internet. But no doubt there's going to be people at school who have access and wherever, or even, hanging out at a friend's house. So I started thinking, and my wife and I were brainstorming, like, maybe we should get him into some therapy. Maybe we should contact some CSATs who can maybe walk with him, because sometimes coming from parents, you kind of shut down. Maybe, you think I know better, right? And so I reached out to 10 or 11 CSATs, and every single one of them, with the exception of one, responded back and said, "Wow, you're
Ooh.
such great parents. Yeah, you're such great parents, but there's no modality, there's no methodology to approaching this with children. We just don't see children. We have, no interest in that. Good luck." And I had one that was willing to do a conference with me, and he's a pastor and he's also a, licensed mental health counselor with a CSAT certification. And we had a really good conversation with him, but even he was like, what your child needs is group. He needs to be in a group.
Mm,
And so I started looking at groups. And would
wow.
you imagine there's nothing for children to turn to?
Yeah.
Andrew Hickman created the Capstone program, which is an amazing program for children
Wow.
15 and up.
Yeah.
Such an amazing program. I can't speak highly enough about it. And then there's another program. Don't quote me on this. I think it's called Bathsheba. I'll link it in the description here, but it's a program, I believe, based in Oregon, where parents and children go together. They attend group together, but then they split out into individual. The parents get some training, the child gets some training. But how do we move towards creating? Like, I would love to be able to go to schools, and you may be able to speak to this as a former um, principal. How do we maybe start some type of initiative in the school where we're going in front of the body of the school and we're just talking about this openly?
Yeah.
Or we're creating groups where children can come and get some education on
Right.
this.
This is tough. This is hard.
Massively.
Hard stuff. I'd say probably the best presentation that you can find out there today is going to be Fight the New Drug. That's the group that I wrote the article with. They will come out to your school. They will do this work for you. And it's done by trained people who know how to work in, youth settings, right? It's non-religious. It's able to be accessed on the public side. Um, that conversation though, and I can sit there and say, and I was that principal. I was the guy that was like, man, there is no way my community would be able to receive something like this. Hey guys, by the way, we're going to have at 9 o'clock, we're going to have all 4 grade levels go through an hour-long session about pornography. We'll see you there. Think about it. It's hard,
But
right?
why is that? I mean, this is beyond epidemic. I mean, we
Uh-huh.
have the DARE program. Like, we come in and talk about drugs. That's an addiction. So I mean, I
Yeah.
just
I
somehow
haven't
we've got
seen
to break
Pierce
the
since the
barriers for that.
90s, man. I don't know if it's still around where you're at, but no,
No, my kid just went through DARE literally a few months. Yeah, and
awesome.
he got a certificate and everything, and I'm super proud of him, and I'm
Yeah,
glad that the principal is willing to bring that. But you bring
absolutely.
up porn,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I think it's that greater need, like we were talking about in our PSAP meeting yesterday, right? We want to have this conversation with pastors. We want to get this info out. We want to talk to leaders who will know and understand that it's important. But the problem is that the conversation is not really comfortable. That's the first thing. Second off is that the way that we view sex, just in different cultures, man. Like,
Mhm.
so, I mean, the beauty of where I've lived and worked in the educational environment, one of the most diverse communities in the world, oil and gas here in Houston, Mike. But I can tell you, so many different students coming from, you know, 40, 50 different you know, locations in the world, man. I'm telling you, like, they all have different approaches. Some are very liberal and very open to discuss. Some are like that is under a lock and key, and we don't even go there. That's the challenge in the public setting, is that you just have a mixed bag. And so being able to can something that communicates that the best way is, I believe this needs to start in our churches. I believe, and my hope, my desire, Jody, is to make a space for pastors to be comfortable with having that conversation with, and first starting off with men. I mean, not to say that women aren't impacted with it, but my first focus and thought is, how do we get dads and how do we get sons and how do we get in a room together and how do we get in a space where we can talk and be safe and understand masturbation, understand pornography, understand how it communicates biblically, right? Where are we supposed to stand on this from the word? And then how do we get in a space that we can facilitate dads having these conversations with their young men, in that space to get vulnerable and to talk and to communicate and to be safe to do so. Um, yeah, that's a desire for me in the ninth, is to make that space happen. You know, I, I, my dad didn't know. He didn't know what I was doing with that computer in my bedroom. He didn't know that computer shouldn't have been in there. He didn't know. He didn't see that, and I didn't talk about the things that happened to me, as a kid, and tell him the hurt and pain that I was hiding. I didn't talk to him about it. I hid it. That's what we do. So, how do we come out of the shadows? How do we help dads who aren't equipped with this, that might be dealing with it themselves? 50% chance it probably is the case. How do we make that happen? That's, I think, the biggest question, but the desire of my heart.
I love that, brother. Quickly, couple parting things. Can you list a couple of books that have been impactful for you that you've read that you'd recommend to people?
Oh my gosh. Where do I start? Let me pull out my library here.
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple of my favorite. I don't know if you've read them, but Unwanted by
That
Jay
was Jay
Springer.
Springer. Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
Jay Springer's book Unwanted, amazing.
Yeah.
The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. I don't know if you've
I
seen
just
that, but
wrote
if
that one down yesterday. Did you share that in that group? I think you did.
I might have.
Yeah.
And then another one is Untethered Soul by
Yes.
Michael Singer.
Yes.
Phenomenal book.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Love them. One that I haven't read but I own is King, Magician, Warrior, Lover, something. I'm probably
Yeah.
botching the title of that, but I'll put a link to it in the description as well.
You shared
Great.
some great ones, man. Unwanted. Yeah, that's a powerful one for me, man. Sex in a Broken World, How Christ Redeems What Sin Distorts, Paul David Tripp. Man,
Mm,
it's just this beautiful picture of what I think people who have struggled with pornography can have an understanding of what that looks like. Broken Boy to Mended Man, Patrick Morley, Gary
never heard
Chapman.
it. Great.
Oh man, it's so good. It's so good talking about the story to, just like I was talking about my brokenness of a child to what it's come to today. It's just, man, John Mark Comer's Practicing the Way. I don't know if you've read that, but
Mm-mm.
I when I started Regen last year and I got to know Jesus as just this beautiful, intimate way. And John talks about following Jesus like he's our rabbi and understanding what that really means and
Mm.
how it, back in the day, it's like if you wanted to become a rabbi, you would hunt these guys down. You would beg them for a moment to talk to them, to discuss something from the word, man. They would test you, they would quiz you, and then you would beg to be a part of that space. So like practicing the way I've listened to that one twice, and it's just practical steps on walking with Jesus has been transformational for me. Yeah. Did you say Singer? You were talking about Michael Singer? Yeah.
Yeah. Untethered Soul.
Untethered Soul was really good. And also The Surrender Experiment. I don't know if you've listened to it. It's
I
kind of like
haven't.
his whole story. You got to listen to it. It's just,
I will.
it's really, really good. But yeah, that's, man, I mean, I could talk on and on.
I bet. I bet. Books. I know for me, early on in my recovery, books, podcasts, so many great tools out there. I really, as I have leaned into this space now for a couple of years, I really see a really, really big gap in children. And, I know I had my secret basement from 3 years old
Mm,
going through trauma as a child all the way I kept those secrets all the way into my early 18, 19, and then of course that just built. And so I think we getting to be able to get into children, I don't know what that's going to take, but I think that's there needs to be a movement there, and I think we can just pray and ask God to open those doors.
mm,
And kind of like we need somebody that's a champion for these children that can get into their social medias or whatever, I don't know, but that can
yeah.
speak to them and open their hearts to reducing shame and just opening up the conversation in a healthy way. And I think we'll see the pendulum go in that direction as time goes on. Any parting thoughts you want to share with viewers who might have watched this long? Parents, pastors, teachers, anybody that is taking this seriously?
Yeah. No, first, thanks for listening. Second, please reach out. Brian, Brian at Ninth Inning Project. I know you'll probably link my stuff, but send me an email, give me a call. You know, I'm ready to take up arms with people to fight this fight. I'm so thankful for my background in what I've been able to do and experience with kids. And I know, man, God's just making a way for me to tell his story for his glory, for his honor, not my own. We've got to do right by our future and our kids. And we've got to fight the fight that our children, our students deserve. They deserve this. We deserve a future for kids to fight for integrity, to start at a place where they deserve uh, to be whole and well. And we're not setting them up for success. I want to do
Mm.
that. It takes us as parents, it takes everybody, man. Like we've got to get in it and get in the fight. And this is where it starts. So yeah.
Thanks for that, Brian. I really appreciate your time today and your vulnerability. It starts with guys like you sharing your story and being open and just wanting to dive in and help. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing this work. It's hard work, and God
Yeah.
bless you for it. And appreciate your
It's
time.
such a joy. I'm just so joyful to know you and to meet you and
Thanks, brother.
to connect and see what you're doing and the great work you're focused on and your family and how God's blessed you and just your conviction, man. I just thank you for that. I thank you for your heart that you're so passionate about this, that you just ache. It's like I can hear it when you talk about it. It's we want to do right. We want to do right. And so
Amen.
it's an honor to know you.
Thank you, brother. All right. You have a good day.
All right, man.